Welcome back to Good Germs Off-Road Adventures, and welcome back to the shop. Today, it's maintenance time for the old Excursion here. We're just going to change the oil. You know, I don't even remember when the last time it was. Maybe I wrote it on the oil filter. Probably not. But we're going to go ahead and change it. I know it's not been too many miles. We don't put a lot of miles on this old girl anymore, but we're going to go ahead and change the oil and check on the other things. So just a quick little overview of the Excursion. She's a 2001 two-wheel drive with the 7.3 Powerstroke. We've had lots of new parts in here, and maybe we'll go through them all. Maybe we won't. I don't really know yet. But she has some miles. She just turned over 351,000 miles, I believe, yesterday. You know, so to change the oil, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need a drain pan and, you know, socket and ratchet for the drain bolt. That's not what that's called. Plug. Oil drain plug. Oil pan hole bolt. You know, we have to take the bolt out to let the oil out of the engine. So we're going to do that. We need the pan, we need the socket and the wrench, ratchet, and probably an oil filter wrench. We'll probably choose a rubber strap, and some gloves, because this is one of the messier oil changes that we do. And then we're going to need just short of 4 gallons, you know, of oil, 15 quarts to be exact, and that should do it. So let's go ahead and get everything put together. All right, so we're going to go back into this cabinet back here. This is where the oil drain pan lives. And I believe it's empty enough to take all 15 quarts. This pan's supposed to hold 24 quarts. But, you know, I guess we'll see. Let's just go ahead and shove this in there. Sure, that's far enough. Okay, and we're going to need a ratchet. We'll go for this one. We're going to need some sockets. And we'll go for this rail of sockets. And we'll just set them over here for now. We're going to need a creeper. Yep. And we're going to need a couple of towels, probably 3 of these towels. Let's get ourselves some gloves here. Sure, we'll start with 2 for now. And let's go ahead and set ourselves up underneath, and, well, first let's take this off, let some air in. Okay. Well, let's just get underneath, I guess, and get the oil drained. Figure out what size that is, because I don't remember. And remember, because it's a Ford, it's metric, because that makes sense. Not that one, though. Not that one either. There we go, it's that one. In case you're wondering, 19 millimeters. Let's get this drain pan under here. Hopefully you can still see. We want lefty-loosey, not righty-tighty. That'd be nice. There we go. good news is the last guy that changed the oil did not over tighten that. And that's good because that was me. Okay. Now, can we do this without, getting it all up our arm? Not bad. Clean this off. That's good. Not seeing really any shavings on the oil. And on the magnet, looked really nice and clean. Well, that's going to drain for the next 37 minutes. So while that's draining, let's go up top and we'll talk you through all the things we've done to the old Excursion here. So like I was saying, while we wait for that to drain for the next 37 minutes, maybe 36 minutes now, because I had to take a minute to get out from under it, I'll go ahead and talk you through all the things we've had to do to the rig here. So this is now the fourth alternator, right at about 200,000 miles, which is the very first issue that I had with the girl here. Original alternator went out, put a O'Reilly Lifetime alternator in it, about 15,000 miles. That alternator went out, and then maybe about 100,000 miles after that, that one went out, and now we have this one, and this one's doing just fine. Recently, we did a new water pump, which you can't see, but it's down there. Water pump, hoses, degas bottle, pulleys, belt. We went ahead and did all of that before we had any leaks and problems. We did put an S&B cold air intake, not for any performance gains, but quite honestly, the original one had broken, the lid wouldn't stay on, and even to find a used one was more expensive than buying this one. And this one is, it's CARB approved, so we can actually do the California emissions check on this, and that's okay. Let's see, transmission, rebuilt at about 333,000 miles, and actually the transmission itself was in good order, but the torque converter had completely seized. Turbo, rebuilt the turbo at about 340,000 miles, maybe a little less than that. Used a kit from Ford Diesel. Did the parts that made it work a little better. I'll leave it at that. Replaced a few parts, like you can see the thing there that I'm pointing at that I can't remember what it's called. That thing. I just can't remember what it's called. I think that's the solenoid for the, the wastegate. Replaced that because it did go out. Added a couple of gauges after we did that work. Also had to replace the valve cover gaskets, and if anybody knows the Powerstrokes, the 7.3s, they, after quite some time, the gasket for the valve covers, they actually contain the wiring harness for the, the glow plugs and the injectors. Well, after a long time and many heat cycles, the wiring harness becomes brittle, it breaks down, and then you lose, half your engine. So, not the engine itself, just the injectors, they quit doing the thing. So replaced both of those. Not even an expensive repair, not too hard. I know there's a lot of stuff it looks like under the hood here, but it's really not hard to replace those. I have replaced one glow plug years ago. I didn't have to replace any others. What else did we do? Batteries. Oh, this thing eats batteries. But come to find out, it's more the terminals. They'll look fine and you can clean them, but the voltage drop is immense in the stock terminals. So we did the military style terminals on it there, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I were able to cut and crimp new ends onto the battery cables and use this style of terminals, and works very well. I haven't had a battery issue since I did that 3 years ago. All right, one of the last things we did is we went ahead and kind of rebuilt the fuel system a little bit. So it was starting to suck air in the suction line, which Ford used a pressurized fuel line connections at the tank for the quick disconnects for the fuel lines that go to the tank, and it's actually a suction there. The fuel pump is not in the tank, it is up under the floorboard by the driver's feet, actually tucked in the frame rail. So we were sucking a little air, and then at about just under a quarter of a tank, it was running out of fuel. And it was starting to just not run so good. So we dropped the tank and actually replaced the pickup boot because it was completely broken off. And then the screens inside of there, they were filled with algae, so not getting much fuel flow. To replace those, I think all in total parts are about $80. You don't need the whole cinder unit typically. It's just the pickup boot and the screens. And then I replaced the fuel line from the tank to the pump with a new fuel line, bypassed the old one, took it out. And since then, I've had no issues with it sucking air, and it just ran so much better. All of a sudden, it had power again. It was losing power. Not that they have a lot of power, but it was losing what it had. I did not do the modifications that you've seen online, perhaps, for the old Fords, where you change the pickup altogether and you get rid of the screens and you put an external filter. I didn't do all that because I am in California and I do have to do the emissions check every other year. And if you have an intelligent emissions guy, he's going to notice. Same with the turbo. You know, the turbo pedestals on these 7.3s, they're known to leak oil, and it's the O-rings at the base of it, but those are easy to replace once you get it all apart. But the valve that opens and shuts for the exhaust gas plug recirculate, I forget what it's called, but it basically shuts down the exhaust a little bit so that way it can warm up a little faster. A very popular modification is just replace the pedestal with one that doesn't have that, and that's oil actuated, so it's also known to leak, and in fact mine does leak a little bit. Look, it's a Powerstroke. If it doesn't leak, is it even a Powerstroke? Come on. Anyway, so I just replaced all the O-rings. It still seeps a little bit of oil, but not nearly enough to even make drops anywhere anymore. But yeah, again, if you have an emissions guy that knows what he's looking at and he notices you have the wrong pedestal, you're going to get in some trouble. So I just didn't want to bother with it, keep it stock there. And, you know, other than a visual, there is no real emissions check on these rigs. So you just have to make sure it can pass the visual, which this one does. Well, that's about it. I'm guessing by now our oil's finished draining. So we're going to get back to doing that. We're going to get the old filter off and get ready to put the new filter on. Give this a little wipe. It's pretty good. When I mean she holds almost 4 gallons, that is no exaggeration. 15 quarts, you know, 4 gallons is 16. This oil pan is every bit of damn near a foot deep. All right, let's go ahead and tighten this up. Perfect. Let's just throw the wrench out there. That's fine. Perfect. Get the spot off the ground because we're not going to make any more spots on the ground. Yeah, right. Okay, so now this is the worst part. Change the oil on this rig here. Getting this giant, nearly coffee can filter out without making a huge mess. So I like to use a strap wrench. That's just easy to use and usually works pretty good. Yeah, and it's tight. And I promise you, I only put it hand tight when I installed it. It just seemed to get tighter. It moved about 1 millimeter. It's pretty good. It's warm. It's also good. For all you guys out there that do these on the regular, what do you use to get these filters loose? Well, that's the end of that strap wrench. Yeah, that just broke clean away. And now how are we going to get that off? Anyway, what do you use to get these off? Because I am always looking for good advice. Is there a way to make this work even though it's broken? Anybody? Bueller? No? Find another one? Okay. Well, the good news is I don't have another one. So I guess I'm going to try to put my hands on it. Oh, goodness. I mean, seriously, tips and tricks. Super welcome at this point, because this is dead. All right, so if anybody was curious, this is the Harbor Freight Pittsburgh flavor strap wrench, and no, it is not very strong. Okay, well, we managed to get it loose, and we just did it by using our hands, really hard. We didn't use this giant set of adjustable pliers at all. Anyway, so it's loose, and now we have to unscrew this to the point where it's going to drain most of its fluid, meaning oil. Why I said fluid, I don't know. And this is why this is my least favorite part of this oil change. And it's my least favorite vehicle to change the oil in. Again, I'd be real interested from some shops and some other people that have some better ideas on how to do this filter. I really just dislike it. I just can't seem to find a way to do it that doesn't make a mess. And if you don't get all if you don't get all the oil out of this filter, when you go to drop it, this thing's still full and it's heavy. And I can't tell you how many times I have actually dropped this filter because it's slippery. How many times I've dropped it right on the ground and ended up with about 1.5 quarts of dirty oil all over the ground. It looks like we're to the point where we need to take it out. And this is the worst part of it. So we're just going to go ahead and slowly turn it. And it is slippery because oil is slippery because it's supposed to be, because that's what oil does. It makes things slippery. And I'm holding the top as I'm loosening it to hopefully not drop this thing and make it flip over when it comes loose. Perfect. And now I'm just going to take this rag here. We're going to wipe off the mating surface up here. Make it nice and clean. That looks super nice. We're also making sure that the old gasket isn't up there. Hopefully you can see it, not my big giant head. But that looks nice and pretty. So for oil filters, we're just going to go with OEM, the Motorcraft filter, FL 1995A, because you can't get it without the A anymore. All right, coming back in here, we've got the new filter prepped with a little bead of fresh new oil on the gasket. And we're going to have a little controversy here because I did not put oil in the filter. I did not pre-oil the filter. Now, I know so many people think that's what you need to do, but I've spoken to several diesel mechanics, and the actual shop manual for these things say to not do that. And the reason for that is by pouring oil into the filter, you're kind of pouring it in backwards from the way the engine sucks it through, and it makes it very easy for contaminants to get into the system and wreak havoc. So no, we did not pre-oil the filter, and I know it's likely to spark some comments. And you know what? If you want to do it on your rig, do it on your rig. It's fine. I've had this rig for, I don't know, 14, 15 years now. I've never pre-oiled the filter. And look, I've got 351,000. You can't tell because my scribbling is bad, but I did go ahead and date it, put the miles, 351,050. And look, this engine, as far as you can tell, just still runs like a top. Anyway, I've got a rag because we're likely to get oil down the side of this as we go to spin it on. We're going to try not to. And not because we want it to stay clean, but just because if it gets oil on it, it gets slippery. And then try to tighten it while it's slippery, well, that's hard. And I think we were successful. All right, so now we're just going to tighten it with our hands here. Perfect. Oh, look, and the sticker's facing out. That's kind of neat. Okay, that's it. that is job done there. So now we're just going to go ahead and get all this junk out from underneath the car here. Now you notice I'm using a funnel here, and it's because I don't find myself to be all that lucky with the pour here. See, I think using a funnel, you can get lucky sometimes. It's kind of like the pull and pray method. You can get lucky a lot of times, but every now and then you're going to end up getting stuff somewhere you didn't want to. You know what I mean? All right, that's it. That is oil changed, job done. Now all we have to do is start it and make sure we didn't make any leaks anywhere. Well, you know, I think that's going to do it. Just a quick little video. And I know there's millions and millions and even more millions of videos out there on changing the oil on a 7.3 Powerstroke. But, you know, what's one more? Sure. Anyway, hope you enjoyed hanging out with me today. I know I enjoyed it. If you wouldn't mind, you know, give us the whole subscribe, like, comment, share thing. All those things really help. And again, thank you all for the support that we've had so far. In the meantime, we'll see you later. Now I have some oil on the floor, you know, down there that I've got to clean up.